Unify.
Yes, but then I got deep conversations over here on the chat, and it's like I'm just I don't know. I've talked a lot tonight with people just chat on just receiving it and then occasional chat. That to me hurts my head on its own.
Yeah,
I'm not
I
drunk.
think this
I'm not drunk.
definitely is like it's a really cool thing for introverts too, because it doesn't really exhaust me as much as going out in person does. I think that there's a certain level of energy expectation, if you're going out in public and you're talking to other people. But if it's just, camera and voice, it really doesn't take that much energy, and you can go for a long time.
I pulled 12-hour GTMs.
Yeah, but I agree. I agree.
Pulled
I
a
agree.
12-hour shift at GTM.
I agree. I just have
Easy.
I need to start getting paid away.
It's just energy. It's energy sucking when I speak to Eric.
What was that?
I don't know. It's just a.
Because they
You'd be able to
dance, they do their
articulate
ENTP dance like two fucking alpha bucks in heat. They start circling around and trying to find weaknesses
Okay.
in the chassis.
Yeah. So Unify, was it?
Wang slash,
Was-
yeah,
was it-
ENTP wang slash.
Was it? Did it take energy out of you guys
ENT.
listening to it? Since you get,
Sort of like
what was it like listening to that?
It wasn't energy draining for me. It was fucking boring. I was like, they're gonna talk about ENTP shit forever.
not again.
I wanted to shoot myself. Why? I can't explain it, so I'd like to hear you do so, if you can. Now I'd like to know who the Zachary guy is. Glad you joined, Zachary.
I was an old host of the show. I made some.
Were you the original host?
The original co-host.
No, Eric is the original host, but I was
Oh.
the next one after that, if that makes sense.
OG Zachary.
OG Zachary.
The old king. The old host.
So why'd you stop hosting and stuff? Did you do your own thing, or did you?
He did
Make
what
your-
INTPs do.
They
He stopped
disappeared.
doing it. Yeah.
No, I was around the first famous person actually Unified, but I don't know. I really didn't feel like I had much to provide in terms of making videos. I want to focus a lot of my time on studying at the moment, and I also kind of thought that the only videos that really got that much exposure that I made were pretty much like quasi love advice videos, and I don't really like making those, so I decided to sort of.
That is a really good reason. Several reasons. So you're in college right now?
Yeah, but I feel like I do most of the important studying on my own time because it's a local college and they offer interesting courses, but ultimately
You're an
it doesn't-
autodidact. You're an
pardon?
autodidact. You're an autodidact. Is that what you're saying? That you're studying? You study things that are not necessarily requiring you to study just for school? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, the college I go to is a local college, and I live in Kentucky, so there's not exactly. I live in Eastern Kentucky, and it's very, rural, and there's not exactly academic excellence here at the college nearby. So until I get to university, it's up to me to really study anything regarding philosophy and the like on my own terms, and so that's primarily what I spend my time doing.
Dude, I would love to talk philosophy with you sometime. And then this is a good medium for you to. So are you an introvert then?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm an introvert. I'm in the Jungian model.
So I'm not. I'm very. I have to disclaim this to everybody new I talk to in here. I am just now starting to really read about the Myers-Briggs stuff, so I can't put a lot of this stuff readily into context. But other than basic stuff like introvert and extrovert stuff, but so it seems like this would have been a great format for you, because that's how I would have liked to learn about things like philosophy. Like I Google shit like left and right and just read a chunk of it and say that I've read Nietzsche or something, or I play Alan Watts' videos. Like, I mean, he's on. If I go through spurts of who I like, but
Yeah, I like
anyway.
Alan Watts's the way he delineates the Neoplatonist framework is very nice, and I like watching his videos, but I don't agree with all of his opinions on things.
You can't.
Well, yeah, when he gets around that sort of like extreme spiritualism kind of things, you have to kind of, at least for me, I have to be kind of selective about what I really align myself with.
Well, I think I think a lot of his stuff is cut out of context, because I've also heard him. Like he's not I don't think Taoist, or I don't. He could appreciate some of the views of other ideologies without necessarily having to conform to them, because he would actually talk a lot about somebody else's teachings, and he would say, now I think this way, but so I don't know, but my point is, I guess, like I thought this would be I'm surprised you're not doing a show that is about philosophy or something, but to help you learn, to track the people that maybe A, are also wanting to learn about stuff and can share information with you, or B, somebody who is has a lot to talk about the subjects that you're currently interested in inquiring more about, but maybe you just do that best on your own.
Well, yeah, I mean, I certainly enjoy talking about philosophy with people, but from my experiences, most people have pretty malnourished interpretations of a lot of the philosophers, or they have a habit to reject some of their ideas based on misunderstanding or lack of, complete information. So I think that most people who discuss philosophy really don't know what they're talking about. So I try to spend most of my time actually studying the text, at least until I come to some firm understanding on my own terms, and then perhaps I can bring that into discussion. Now, with that said, though, however, I have had some interesting discussions on here with people before, and it has been enjoyable. But in general, it just seems like, especially the people that I know in my day-to-day personal life, it seems that they're lacking in particular areas. So it, forces me to go with.
Why don't you?
Question I have, Zach. Do you listen to the Partially Examined Life podcast at all?
I do not. Could you inform me about that?
Oh, thank you. It's some guys who, I can't remember their exact introduction, but I liked it quite a bit. It was, I think their introduction something like some people who thought at one point about getting degrees in philosophy, but then thought better of it, or something like that. I think they got their own degrees in different things, but they get together and they do the Partially Examined Life podcast, which is essentially a podcast where they talk about philosophy, different philosophers throughout the ages. They examine Plato, Kant, Nietzsche, different things like that. They'll talk about Pyrrhonian skepticism, different things, but they do it in a very layman's term sort of way, so that it's not like, well, you'd know what I was talking about if you had read this, and puts the burden on you to go read the thing they talk, as I said, in layman's terms.
Yeah, totally think that
so
shit,
that
dog.
you can, pick
Totally
up
think that shit.
Well, yeah, go ahead and link it, and certainly I'll check it out eventually. Yes.
Maybe it would be a bit too pedestrian for you. I don't know. I'm kind of a philosophy scrub anyway. So
what I'm wondering is,
honestly, I think everyone who gets into philosophy, I would consider myself barely scratching the surface right now. But
yeah.
I think the most important thing is to struggle with the actual texts themselves. And someone told me that a long time ago. It was a professor, and that helped me a lot. Even though, most of the time when you read through the texts themselves, especially when you get around the continental philosophers, they're very, very dense, very, very difficult to get through. But I think it's ultimately beneficial. It rewires you in certain ways, and I think that's important when you address a philosophical text, that you're entering a particular state of mind that's sort of idiosyncratic compared to other, if you're reading a novel or something like that.
This might sound somewhat intellectually lazy to you, I don't know, but my method of going about things has been to sort of allow, as I bump into things, allow my mind to expand, and then come up with an idea, like be like, oh, I think this. And I like, instead of going out and trying to read philosophers and really trying to delve into the text and try to understand what their lives were like back during their time frames, instead I like to come up with something and then hear from somebody else. Oh yeah, this philosopher said that like back then, about it or something like that. It doesn't happen often, but rather than, I don't know, I struggle with going back to old texts and things like that.
Yeah, because there's a different.
I don't like the whole studying philosophers thing. That's what so much. I like the philosophy. I don't so much like studying philosophers.
Well, what do you mean? Like you don't like studying a philosopher particularly for like a certain thing?
Well, it's fine if you're talking about the person, but it's like it just, for me, it feels like in order to have it, like the root concern for me is what is the philosophy that we're discussing, and somehow it ends up devolving or mutating into this thing where you're arguing whether or not you thought Nietzsche said this particular thing in mind because he was thinking a certain way on that Tuesday when he wrote it. And it's like, at some point I feel like I don't care so much about Nietzsche as much as I did maybe what he had to say about something, but at the same time I haven't read all of Nietzsche's stuff. I haven't read all of.
Yeah, I think that Nietzsche specifically is someone who's extremely misinterpreted or extremely misrepresented. Like, I think people who want to approach Nietzsche specifically have to really go back to, like, he had a very favorable view of the Greeks, and I mean his first book was analyzing the tragic themes of the Greeks and what, in a cultural context, what Socrates meant, what the Dionysian and Apollonian elements meant in their, like Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, stuff like that. But I think that a lot of people interpret Nietzsche pretty, almost like, I like to call that Wikipedia philosopher. Like the people who really don't understand much about what he's actually saying. But Nietzsche has a pretty interesting intellect. I think it's Nietzsche specifically is an interesting example because he there's a really big divide, it seems, between people who, some people seem to think that Nietzsche has some sort of prescriptive, mindset in place, that he is trying to set the ground fertile for a new normative framework. And then some people disagree with that, and they say that he, as he regarded himself, is more of a psychologist, more of a analyst of certain aspects of human behavior, ideological movements, things like that. So there's definitely a great divide between the interpreters of Nietzsche. But personally, I'm more prone to the prescriptive type of things. But also, I started with his Thus Spoke Zarathustra, which is apparently the one you're not supposed to start with if you don't have a good understanding of what
of Good and Evil or whatever it's called laying around. I still haven't fucking read it.
Oh yeah, Beyond Good and Evil.
Beyond Good and Evil. See, for me, I guess to my mind, that's exactly the sort of issues where I have, where it starts becoming more about the philosophy, not even the philosophy, more trying to discern Nietzsche rather than what Nietzsche may or may not have been talking about. I don't know all that much what Nietzsche's been talking about. I just know that a lot of times, if people are talking about philosophy, all I have to do is say the word Nietzsche, and it becomes this fucking thing where it's like, oh, I think he was thinking this, or I think he was thinking that. Sometimes I get bothered by the politics that get inserted into the philosophy. Are you saying that?
Wouldn't that? I have a theory. Maybe people mention Nietzsche because that's really the only philosopher they can mention readily, other than Socrates or Aristotle or something like that. Therefore, probably can't talk too well about him in general. Anyhow, and I also think, like you originally said, you're not more, because I agree with you at first, then I was like, no, I disagree. Like you said, I care more about the philosophy. I may have misunderstood you, but you said I may have more. I don't care much about the philosopher as much as the philosophy, but I think you can't separate the two, because when you have a prolific philosopher, you get to see the way that their philosophy evaluated over time, and then that in its own is a certain part of philosophy. In its own, it's seeing where they started from as far as how they're, because philosophy is trying to figure out why we're here and what to do with it and these things, and why people do what people do, and there's a lot of components involved.